Jake Miller turned the wrench one last time and wiped the oil from his hands. Another day, another handful of repairs that barely paid the rent. His little shop sat squeezed between a noodle restaurant and a pawn shop in the worst part of Chicago. The sign outside said Miller's Fix It, but half the letters didn't light up anymore. He didn't mind though. This place was his kingdom. Every tool had its spot on the wall. Every workbench told a story. Jake had been fixing things since he was 8 years old, taking apart his dad's radio just to see how it worked. 20 years later, he could fix just about anything you put in front of him. Toasters, laptops, car engines, even those fancy new hologram projectors rich people bought. If it was broken, Jake could make it work again. The clock on the wall showed 8:30. Time to close up. Jake grabbed his jacket and reached for the light switch when he heard the bell above his door jingle. A little girl stumbled inside, her face red from crying. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Her clothes were dirty and her shoes had holes in them. "Please, mister," she gasped, trying to catch her breath. "You have to help me. My toy is broken and nobody else will fix it." Jake knelt down to her level. His knees cracked a bit. "Getting old. Hey there, it's okay. Let me take a look." The girl pulled something from inside her jacket and held it out with both hands. Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was a dragon. A mechanical dragon about the size of a football. But this wasn't any toy he'd ever seen before. The metal gleamed even under the dim lights of his shop. It had tiny scales etched into its body. Wings that looked like they could actually fold and unfold. Little clawed feet with joints so precise they made his best work look clumsy. Jake took it carefully. The weight was all wrong. Too light for the size. The metal felt smooth but not like any alloy he knew. He turned it over in his hands and found a panel on the belly. Inside were circuits that made his head hurt just looking at them. Patterns that didn't follow any logic he understood. A power source the size of a marble that glowed with a faint blue light. "Where did you get this?" he asked softly. "I found it," the girl said. "In the old junkyard. It was just sitting there in a box. When I picked it up, its eyes glowed for a second, but then it stopped working. I've had it for 2 months. It's my only toy, mister. My only friend." Jake looked at her face. Really looked at it. The hope in her eyes. The way her hands twisted together nervously. He knew that look. He'd worn it himself as a kid, the times when something precious broke and you had no money to replace it. "I don't have any money," she whispered, looking at her feet. "But I can sweep your shop. Or run errands. Or—" "Tell you what," Jake interrupted. "Come back in 3 days. I'll see what I can do." The girl's face lit up like the sun. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it. Now get home before it gets too dark. What's your name, kiddo?" "Lily." "Okay, Lily. 3 days. I promise." After she left, Jake locked the door and carried the dragon to his main workbench. He cleared everything else away and set up his best lights. For the next hour, he just stared at it. Photographed it from every angle. Made notes. Tried to understand what he was looking at. This wasn't human technology. No way. No how. The more he examined it, the more certain he became. The joints used principles he'd never encountered. The circuits didn't follow any pattern from Earth. That power source shouldn't exist according to everything he knew about batteries and energy storage. But Jake had a rule. A rule he'd followed since the day he opened this shop. Every machine speaks the same language. Not English or Chinese or whatever. The language of function. Of purpose. If something was built to work, then there was a way to make it work again. You just had to listen. He made coffee. Strong coffee. Then he got to work. The first night he barely scratched the surface. He mapped every visible component, drew diagrams, tried to understand the flow of energy through the system. The second night he started taking it apart, piece by careful piece. Some parts he could remove. Others seemed fused together by methods he couldn't identify. He made notes of everything. By the third night, Jake's eyes burned and his back ached, but he was starting to understand. Not completely. Not even mostly. But enough. The dragon had been damaged by corrosion. Some kind of liquid had gotten inside and eaten away at the connections. The power source was fine. The mechanical parts were fine. But the pathways that connected everything were broken. Jake couldn't recreate the alien circuits. But he could bridge them. He pulled out his soldering iron and his finest copper wire. He grabbed components from his parts bins. Resistors and capacitors from old computers. Circuit boards from broken phones. Nothing matched the alien technology, But maybe, just maybe, he could make them talk to each other. His hands moved on instinct. Connecting this to that. Rerouting power here. Creating a bypass there. It was like translating between languages when you only knew half the words. You had to guess. You had to feel it. At 4 in the morning on the third day, Jake connected the last wire. His hands shook as he pressed the activation point on the dragon's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the blue light in its power core pulsed. Once. Twice. The dragon's eyes flickered. A soft golden glow filled them. Its wings spread slowly, joints moving with a quiet whisper. It lifted its head. Turned to look at Jake with those glowing eyes. And from its tiny mouth came a puff of holographic flame that danced in the air before fading. Jake laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Well, I'll be damned. Welcome back, little guy. The dragon made a sound. Almost like a purr. Then it settled back onto the workbench, wings folded, looking content. Jake didn't know that inside that dragon was a quantum transmitter. He didn't know that every movement of his hands had been recorded and broadcast across 12 light-years of space. He didn't know that right now, on a world he'd never heard of, creatures beyond his imagination were watching his every move and arguing about what it meant. All Jake knew was that in 3 hours, a little girl named Lily would walk through his door. And he'd get to see her face when her only friend came back to life. That was enough. That was everything. He set the dragon carefully in a padded box and finally let himself sleep on the old couch in the back room. Outside, the sun rose over Chicago. Inside, something ancient and alien rested peacefully, repaired by human hands that refused to give up on broken things. 12 light-years from Earth, in a chamber carved from a single massive crystal, Grand Architect Varenthal watched his display screen and felt something he hadn't experienced in 300 years. Complete and utter shock. His clawed hand slammed down on the council table so hard the impact echoed through the hall. This is impossible. That memorial required our most advanced quantum fabricators. It needed stellar-grade alloys that take decades to forge. There are only 12 artificers in the entire conclave who could even attempt such a repair. Around the circular chamber, 200 of the greatest minds in Draken civilization sat in stunned silence. They'd all watched the same recording. All seen the impossible happen in real time. Council member Draven leaned forward, his copper scales gleaming under the chamber lights. Play it again. From the beginning. The holographic display shifted, showing Jake Miller's shabby little repair shop. They watched him examine the keeper's memorial with tools that belonged in a museum. A magnifying glass. A simple multimeter. Hand tools that wouldn't look out of place in a cave. Look at his facility, Varenthal continued, his voice rising. There's no quantum resonance chamber. No molecular assemblers. He doesn't even have a proper fabrication suite. That workspace is smaller than my personal closet. Yet he succeeded, came a voice from the shadows. Everyone turned. Elder the Tsar emerged from the darkness at the edge of the chamber. She was ancient even by Draken standards. Her scales had turned almost white with age, and her eyes held the weight of 2,000 years of memory. When she spoke, people listened. He succeeded where our master artificers would have required months of preparation and equipment worth more than that entire human city, the Tsar said quietly. Please, continue the recording. They watched Jake work through 3 days and nights. Watched him sketch diagrams on paper. Actual paper. Not holographic displays or quantum computation grids. Just paper and pencil. They saw him pull apart the memorial with a carefulness that bordered on reverence, even though he clearly had no idea what it was. His using copper wire, Draven whispered in horror. Copper. We haven't used copper for electrical connections in 6,000 years. Watch his face, the Tsar commanded. Jake's expression on screen showed intense concentration. He wasn't just randomly connecting things. He was thinking. Testing. Adjusting. Every few minutes he'd pause and just stare at the memorial, as if listening to something only he could hear. What is he doing? A younger council member asked. He's having a conversation with it, the Tsar said. He doesn't know our protocols or our methods. So instead, he's asking the memorial itself what it needs. He's listening to what the damage tells him. Responding to what the machine shows him. The recording showed Jake soldering a connection. The technique was crude by Draken standards, but his hands moved with absolute confidence. Then he tested the circuit, frowned, adjusted something, tested again. A small smile crossed his face. That smile, Varenthal said slowly. I remember that feeling. When you solve a problem nobody else could figure out. When the pieces finally fit together. We used to feel that way, didn't we? Before everything became standardized. The chamber fell silent. Uncomfortable. Because Vorenthal had just spoken a truth nobody wanted to acknowledge. Counselor Mithra stood, her green scales rippling. This is offensive. That memorial contains the consciousness fragment of Keeper Torvash. A revered elder. To see it repaired with such primitive methods. Works perfectly, the Tsar interrupted. Scan the memorial's current functionality. A technician's claws danced across a control panel. Numbers appeared in the air. 93% functionality restored. All primary systems operational. The consciousness fragment is stable and undamaged. Power efficiency is actually better than before the damage occurred. Better? Mithra's voice cracked. How? The human's cooling modifications, the technician explained. They're inefficient by our standards, but they distribute heat more evenly than the original design. It reduces stress on the quantum cores. Vorenthal sat back heavily in his seat. He improved it. By accident. Because he didn't know he wasn't supposed to change the design. Not by accident, the Tsar corrected. By necessity. He had a problem, excess heat. He had limited resources. So he adapted. He innovated. When was the last time any of us truly innovated? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nobody wanted to answer it. Because they all knew the truth. The Draken Conclave had achieved technological mastery 10,000 years ago. Since then, they'd been perfecting what they already knew. Following ancient protocols. Refining old methods. But true innovation? True creative problem solving? That had died somewhere along the way. Our academies teach 300,000 years of accumulated knowledge, Draven said quietly. Every problem has a documented solution. Every repair follows established procedures. When we encounter something new, we search our databases for the closest match and apply the appropriate historical method. And when the historical methods don't work? The Tsar asked. Silence. We've become rigid, the Tsar continued. Brittle. We know everything about how things should work, but we've forgotten how to figure out what to do when they don't. This human, Jake Miller, he knows nothing about quantum mechanics or stellar metallurgy. But he knows how to solve problems. He knows how to adapt. And right now, that might be more valuable than all our accumulated knowledge. What are you suggesting? Vorenthal asked, though his tone said he already knew. The galaxy is changing. We all know it. The reality tears in Sector 9. The hostile machine intelligence spreading through the outer colonies. The dimensional anomalies that don't follow any laws of physics we understand. Our old methods aren't solving these new problems fast enough. The Tsar walked to the center of the chamber, her ancient bones creaking slightly. These humans. They're young. Primitive. They've barely left their own solar system. But they have something we lost somewhere in our 10 millennia of perfection. They remember how to improvise. How to make do. How to solve problems they've never seen before with tools that shouldn't work. You want to contact them, Mithra said. Not a question. I want to test them, the Tsar corrected. If Jake Miller is unique among his species, then this is merely interesting. But if this adaptability, this creative problem-solving, is common among humans? Then perhaps they have something to teach us. Teach us. Vorenthal's voice held disbelief. We're the Draken Conclave. We've mastered technologies these humans won't understand for 1,000 years. Yes, the Tsar said softly. And that mastery has made us forget the most important lesson. Technology isn't about dominance over nature. It's a conversation with it. That human sat in his primitive workshop and had a conversation with a piece of technology so far beyond him it might as well be magic. And the technology answered. Because he listened. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of counselors who'd lived for centuries. When was the last time any of you truly listened to what a machine was telling you, instead of just consulting the manual? Nobody answered. I call for a vote, the Tsar declared. We send an observer to Earth. We test this Jake Miller and others like him. If they pass, we make contact. If they fail, we leave them alone and continue as we always have. All in favor? The vote took 10 minutes. When it finished, the chamber erupted in argument. But the decision was made. The Tsar looked at the frozen image of Jake Miller on the screen, this unremarkable human in his unremarkable shop, holding a piece of technology that should have been impossible for him to repair. Let's see what you're really capable of, Jake Miller, she whispered. Let's see if your entire species remembers the lessons we forgot. Across the chamber, Vorenthal approached her. You really think they can teach us something? The Tsar smiled, showing rows of crystalline teeth. I think that humans spent 3 days solving a problem our best mind said was impossible without specialized equipment. I think he did it with scrap metal and stubbornness. And I think if we've grown so dependent on our perfect tools and perfect methods that we can't improvise anymore, then yes. These primitive, stubborn, creative humans might have exactly the lesson we need to remember. The Conclave's first observer ship departed for Earth within the week. And Jake Miller, sleeping peacefully in his shop after reuniting a little girl with her mechanical dragon, had no idea that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. 3 months passed since Jake fixed the dragon toy. Business stayed slow but steady. He'd almost forgotten about the weird alien technology when the bell above his door chimed on a Tuesday afternoon. The woman who walked in was tall. Really tall. At least 6.5 feet. She wore a long dark coat with the hood pulled up, which seemed odd given it was the middle of summer in Chicago. Her voice had a strange musical quality to it, like she was speaking and humming at the same time. Are you Jake Miller? She asked. That's what the sign says. What can I do for you? She placed a sleek black case on his workbench. I have several items requiring repair. I've been told you're the best in this city. Jake wiped his hands on his rag. I don't know about best, but I get the job done. Let's see what you've got. The woman opened the case. Inside were 7 objects, each weightier than the last. They didn't look like anything from Earth. Jake's stomach did a little flip. These were like the dragon. Alien technology. But he kept his face neutral and picked up the first item. It looked like a gyroscope that someone had crossed with a Rubik's Cube. Metal rings spun inside other rings, but they were completely frozen in place now. Jake turned it over in his hands. What's it supposed to do? He asked. It stabilizes gravitational fields, the woman said simply. Jake blinked. Right. Okay. Come back in 2 days. After she left, Jake locked the door and really examined the device. It took him 6 hours just to figure out how to open it without breaking anything. Inside was a maze of components that made his head spin. But there was something off about the way heat dissipated through the system. The cooling wasn't efficient. For 2 days Jake worked on it. He couldn't understand half of what he was looking at, but he could see the heat problem. So he did what made sense. He pulled cooling pipes from an old computer, modified them to fit, and created a circulation system using principles from car radiators. It wasn't pretty. It definitely wasn't how the original designers intended it. But when he powered it on, the rings spun smoothly and the whole device stayed cool. The woman returned exactly 48 hours later. She tested the device without saying a word, then nodded. Impressive. Here's the second item. This one looked like a crystal sphere with metal veins running through it. Some kind of communication device, she said. The quantum components were damaged. Jake stared at it for 3 days. He couldn't fix the quantum parts. They operated on principles way beyond him. But he noticed the device was trying to send signals that kept getting corrupted. He couldn't repair the source of the corruption. But he could work around it. Jake rigged up an error correction system using classical computing principles. It was like putting a translator between 2 people who spoke different languages. The device would never work at full capacity, but his system caught and corrected most of the errors. When he tested it, functionality came back to 87%. The woman's eyes gleamed when she saw it working. You continue to surprise me, Jake Miller. Third item. Over the next month, she brought him challenge after challenge. A power regulator that needed complete rewiring. Jake used techniques from electrical engineering and some creative thinking with capacitors. A sensor array that had gone haywire. He couldn't recalibrate it the right way, so he recalibrated it the wrong way 3 times until it averaged out to correct. Each problem pushed him further. Each solution felt like climbing a mountain in the dark. But Jake had learned something important over his years as a mechanic. When you don't know the right way to do something, you try every wrong way until one of them works. The 7th item stopped him cold. It was a component about the size of his fist, made from a material that seemed to shift colors when he moved it. The woman explained it was part of a faster-than-light drive. The core had cracked and was leaking exotic particles. Jake spent 2 full days examining it. He tried every approach he could think of. Nothing worked. The technology was just too far beyond him. The materials didn't exist on Earth. The principles it operated on made no sense. Finally, he called the woman. I can't fix this, he said when she arrived. The words hurt to say. Jake Miller could fix anything. That was his whole identity. But this? This was impossible. Can't or won't? The woman asked. Can't. It's beyond me. The crack goes through the molecular structure. I'd need materials and tools that don't exist on this planet. Jake pulled out his notebook. But I can tell you exactly what's wrong. And I've got 3 different approaches someone with the right equipment might try. The first method is risky but fast. The second is safer but needs specialized containment. The third is experimental, but based on the energy readings, it might actually improve performance. The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then she reached up and pulled back her hood. Jake stumbled backward, knocking over his stool. His back hit the workbench hard. She wasn't human. Not even close. Scales covered her face, shimmering like polished metal. 2 horns curved back from her forehead. Her eyes glowed with an inner golden light. When she smiled, he saw rows of sharp crystalline teeth. What the hell are you? Jake gasped. My name is Karate. I am of the Draken Conclave. Her voice changed, becoming deeper and more resonant. And congratulations, Jake Miller. You just passed the final test. Test? What test? Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Karate gestured to the 7 items on his workbench. Each of these was designed to evaluate different aspects of problem solving. Technical knowledge, creative thinking, adaptive reasoning, resource management. But the 7th item was the most important test of all. I failed that one. I couldn't fix it. Exactly, Karate said, and her smile grew wider. You admitted it. You didn't pretend knowledge you don't possess. You didn't make up solutions to appear competent. Instead, you clearly explained the problem and offered intelligent suggestions for those who could solve it. Do you know how rare that is? Jake slowly picked up his stool and sat down. His legs felt shaky. I'm gonna need you to explain what's happening here. From the beginning. Karate pulled the dragon toy from her coat. The same one Jake had repaired months ago. This is called a Keeper's Memorial. It contains the consciousness fragment of one of our most revered elders. It was lost on Earth 42 years ago. We believed it was gone forever. The technology required to repair it exists in only a handful of facilities across our entire civilization. But I fixed it with copper wire and solder, Jake said quietly. Yes. You did. And the entire Draken Conclave watched you do it. We've been studying your species ever since, trying to understand how you succeeded where our master artificers would have failed without their advanced facilities. Jake looked at the 7 items on his workbench. So all of this was a test? To see if I was just lucky that one time? To see if your gifts are unique or common among humans. To see if your species possesses something we've lost. Karate's expression became serious. Jake Miller, the Draken Conclave is 10,000 years old. We've mastered technologies your species won't discover for centuries. We can manipulate gravity, fold space, and harness the power of stars. But we've forgotten something crucial along the way. We've forgotten how to improvise. How to adapt. How to solve problems we've never seen before. And you think humans can do that? I think you spent 3 days fixing a quantum-entangled consciousness storage device with tools from a hardware store. I think you just solved 6 problems using methods that would make our engineers' heads explode. And most importantly, when you hit your limit, you admitted it honestly instead of pretending. Karate extended her clawed hand. The Conclave wants to meet you, Jake Miller. We have an offer to make. You can refuse, and we'll leave your world alone. You can pretend this conversation never happened and go back to your normal life. Or you can come with me and see wonders beyond your imagination. But I warn you, if you come, nothing will ever be the same. Jake looked at his shop. The faded sign. The worn tools. The simple life he'd built. Then he looked at the dragon toy, at the 7 impossible devices, at this alien being standing in his workspace. He thought about Lily's face when her toy came back to life. About the satisfaction of solving problems nobody else could solve. About every broken thing he'd ever fixed and every grateful smile he'd earned. If I go with you, Jake said slowly, can I come back? Whenever you wish. Jake stood up and grabbed his jacket. Then let's go. But I'm bringing my tools. Something tells me I'm gonna need them. Karate's laugh sounded like wind chimes in a thunderstorm. Oh, Jake Miller. You have no idea how right you are. The shuttle ride to Jupiter took 6 hours. 6 hours of Jake pressing his face against the window like a kid at an aquarium. Earth got smaller behind them. The moon passed by. Mars was a red dot in the distance. And then Jupiter filled the entire view, its swirling storms making his stomach flip. But it wasn't Jupiter that took his breath away. It was what orbited around it. Massive rings of crystal and metal circled the gas giant. Each structure was bigger than any city Jake had ever seen. Lights glowed from within like stars trapped in glass. Ships moved between the rings, sleek and graceful as dolphins. Some of the structures spun slowly, creating artificial gravity. Others just floated, defying everything Jake knew about physics. "Welcome to Conclave Outpost 7, Karate said from the pilot's seat. "Try not to break anything." "I don't even know what I'm looking at," Jake whispered. "Home," Karate said simply. "Or one of them, anyway. We have 17 major outposts throughout this galaxy, and about 300 minor ones. This is where we conduct most of our research and manufacturing for this sector." The shuttle docked at one of the smaller rings. When the doors opened, Jake stepped into a corridor that seemed to be made entirely of light. The walls glowed softly. The floor felt solid but looked transparent. Through it he could see stars. "Don't look down if it makes you dizzy," Karate advised. Too late. Jake's knees wobbled. He forced himself to look straight ahead and focus on putting one foot in front of the other. They passed other Draken in the corridors. Some had scales like Karate's, shimmering metallic colors. Others were different shades, from deep emerald green to bright copper to dark obsidian. All of them were tall, powerful, and moved with a grace that made Jake feel clumsy. Several stopped to stare at him. He was definitely the only human here. The grand chamber made his jaw drop. It was enormous, like a cathedral mixed with a courtroom and a throne room all at once. The ceiling curved up into a dome that showed the actual stars outside, not a screen but somehow the real thing. Hundreds of Draken filled the space, sitting on benches carved from crystal. Their combined presence was overwhelming. At the center of it all, on a throne that seemed to be made of captured starlight, sat the oldest creature Jake had ever seen. Her scales were almost white, worn smooth by time. Her eyes were the color of ancient amber, and when she looked at Jake, he felt like she could see straight through him. "Jake Miller," her voice resonated through the chamber, not loud but somehow filling every corner. "Welcome to the Draken Conclave. I am Elder the Tsar. Please, approach." Jake walked forward on shaky legs. Every eye in the place was on him. He'd never felt so small in his life. "Thank you for the invitation," he managed. His voice sounded tiny in the huge space. "Though I gotta admit, I'm not entirely sure why I'm here." A ripple of sound went through the chamber. It took Jake a moment to realize they were laughing. Not mean laughter, but amused. Like he'd said something unexpectedly funny. Thessra's expression softened. "Your honesty is refreshing. Let me be equally honest with you. The Draken Conclave is dying." The chamber went silent. Jake felt the mood shift instantly. "Not in body," the Tsar continued. "Our people live for thousands of years. Our technology can cure almost any disease, repair almost any injury. But we are dying in spirit. In creativity. In the ability to truly innovate." She gestured, and holographic images filled the air around Jake. He saw tears in space itself, reality ripping open like fabric. Strange machines that looked hostile and wrong. Storms made of colors that shouldn't exist. "The galaxy is changing," the Tsar said. "New threats emerge that don't follow the old rules. Problems appear that our ancient solutions cannot solve. And we find ourselves paralyzed, unable to adapt quickly enough." Another Draken stepped forward, his copper scales gleaming. "I am Grand Architect Varenthal. I have studied engineering for 400 years. I have designed ships that can cross galaxies. I have built stations that harvest the power of stars. But when faced with truly novel problems, I find myself reaching for old solutions that no longer work." "We all do," another voice called out. Jake turned to see a green-scaled Draken standing. "I am Counselor Draven. I teach at our greatest academy. We have 300,000 years of accumulated knowledge in our databases. Every problem that has ever been solved, we have documented. Every repair technique ever developed, we have recorded. But when something breaks in a new way, when a problem appears that isn't in our databases, we struggle. Because we've forgotten how to truly improvise." The Tsar leaned forward on her throne. "Jake Miller, you repaired a keeper's memorial with copper wire and determination. That memorial was built using quantum-entangled materials forged in the heart of a star. It required knowledge that your species won't discover for centuries. Yet you fixed it anyway, using tools that belong in a museum and materials we haven't touched in millennia." "I just did what made sense," Jake said quietly. "Exactly." Varenthal's voice boomed. You didn't know our rules, our protocols, our approved methods. So instead, you listened to what the device itself told you. You had a conversation with technology so far beyond you it might as well be magic. And it answered, because you asked the right questions. The Tsar stood from her throne. Even ancient and weathered, she radiated power. We need teachers, Jake Miller. Not diplomats or scientists or warriors. We need people who remember that technology is not about dominance, but dialogue. People who understand that sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one, but the one that works with what you have available. You want me to teach you? Jake's voice cracked slightly. I'm a mechanic from Chicago. I fix toasters and car engines. You've got technology that makes our best stuff look like Stone Age tools. And that's exactly why we need you, Draven said. Because you don't think like we do. You don't have the weight of 10,000 years of tradition holding you back. When you see a problem, you don't search our databases for the approved solution. You just solve it. The Tsar walked down from her throne, moving slowly on ancient legs. She stopped in front of Jake. Up close, he could see the wisdom in her eyes, the weight of centuries. We're not asking you to teach us technology, Jake Miller. We're asking you to teach us how to think like you do. How to improvise. How to adapt. How to make do with what you have instead of waiting for the perfect tool. She paused. In exchange, we offer humanity our protection. Our knowledge. Our partnership. We will share with your species technologies that will transform your world. We will defend you from threats you don't even know exist yet. And together, perhaps both our peoples will become something greater than either could be alone. Jake looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces watching him. These beings were ancient, powerful, and terrifyingly advanced. But he saw something in their eyes that surprised him. Not arrogance or superiority. Vulnerability. Hope. They were asking for help, and they were genuinely afraid he might say no. He thought about his shop back home. About Lily and her dragon toy. About every person who'd ever brought him something broken and trusted him to make it right. I'm just one guy, Jake said. I can't teach your whole civilization. You won't be alone, Karate spoke up. If you accept, we'll bring more humans here. Engineers. Mechanics. Thinkers. People who approach problems the way you do. This will become an exchange program. Your people learn from us. We learn from you. And I can go home whenever I want. Whenever you wish, the Tsar confirmed. Jake took a deep breath. This was insane. Completely insane. A week ago his biggest worry was making rent. Now he was standing in an alien space station being asked to teach ancient dragon beings how to fix things. But when he thought about it, really thought about it, the answer was obvious. Okay, Jake said. I'll do it. But I've got one condition. The chamber held its breath. That dragon toy, the memorial or whatever you call it. The one I fixed. I want it to stay with Lily, the little girl who brought it to me. She found it. She loved it when it was broken. It should be hers. The Tsar smiled, showing rows of crystalline teeth that somehow looked warm instead of threatening. The memorial has already decided to stay with her. It chose her the day she picked it up from that junkyard. We simply didn't know it yet. She extended her clawed hand. Jake shook it, her scales warm and smooth under his palm. Welcome to the conclave, Jake Miller. I suspect you're about to change our world in ways neither of us can imagine. Jake grinned despite his nervousness. Well, I've never been good at following instructions anyway. Might as well teach you folks how to break a few rules. The chamber erupted in what Jake could only describe as draconic laughter. And somewhere deep inside, he felt something shift. His life would never be simple again. But maybe, just maybe, that was okay. 2 years changed everything. Jake stood in a workshop on Mars, watching a young Draken engineer named Praxis struggle with a damaged gravity drive. The kid was talented, maybe 150 years old, which was young for their kind. But right now he looked ready to throw his tools across the room. I don't understand, Praxis hissed, his blue scales rippling with frustration. The manual says to replace the entire quantum assembly. But the replacement parts won't arrive for another week, and this ship needs to launch in 3 days. Without the drive, 200 colonists are stuck in orbit. Jake walked over, carrying a cup of coffee. Real Earth coffee, shipped all the way to Mars because he'd missed it too much. What does the drive say? Praxis looked at him like he was crazy. It's a machine, Jake. It doesn't speak. Doesn't it? Jake set down his coffee and tapped the drive housing. Listen. Really listen. Hear that harmonic? That high-pitched whine underneath the main hum. Praxis tilted his head, his ear slits flexing. Yes, I hear it. It indicates quantum instability in the core assembly. Does it though? Jake grabbed a scanner and ran it over the housing. Look at these readings. The quantum core is fine. Perfect, actually. But see this? The mounting brackets are misaligned by 0.03 degrees. The core is vibrating against the housing. That's your whine. But the manual says. Forget the manual for a second. Just look at what the machine is telling you. The quantum assembly isn't broken. It's just sitting crooked. You don't need new parts. You need to realign what you've got. Praxis stared at the readings, then at Jake, then back at the drive. There's no protocol for field realignment of a quantum drive core. So make one, Jake said with a grin. You've got the tools. You've got the knowledge. You know it'll work. The only thing stopping you is a rule that says you're not supposed to try. For the next hour, Jake guided Praxis through the process. Tiny adjustments, careful measurements, constant listening to how the drive responded. When Praxis made the final calibration and the drive hummed to life, smooth and clean without that telltale whine, the young Draken just stared at his own hands. I just broke about 15 different safety protocols, Praxis said slowly. Yep. And created a repair procedure that doesn't exist in any manual. Yep. And that ship is going to launch on time because of it. Yep. Jake clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome to improvisation, kid. Sometimes good enough right now beats perfect next week. Especially when people are counting on you. Praxis looked at Jake with something like awe. You just taught me something our academies don't cover in 4 centuries of education. You taught me to listen to what's actually wrong instead of what should be wrong. This same scene was playing out across a dozen facilities throughout the solar system. Human engineers worked alongside Draken artificers. At first, the culture clash had been rough. The Draken wanted everything done by the book. Humans wanted to try things and see what worked. Arguments happened. Mistakes were made. But slowly, something beautiful started to emerge. Draken engineers learned that sometimes duct tape and hope could hold things together long enough to find a proper solution. That failure wasn't shameful but educational. That the best answer wasn't always the most elegant one, just the one that solved the problem. Humans learned precision they'd never imagined possible. Theory that explained why their improvised solutions worked. Access to materials and tools that made their wildest dreams look small. Together, they started solving problems neither species could crack alone. Jake's proudest moment came 6 months into the program. A dimensional incursion hit one of the outer colonies, reality itself tearing open and spilling hostile energy into normal space. The Draken had protocols for this, ancient rituals involving massive quantum computers and weeks of calculation to weave a containment field. They had 6 hours before the tear expanded enough to swallow the entire colony. The response team was joint human Draken. Jake wasn't even supposed to be there, but he'd hitched a ride on the response ship because he was curious. Now he found himself in a command center watching both species argue about what to do. We need the quantum processors from the homeworld, Grand Architect Varenthal insisted. The calculations are too complex for our mobile units. We don't have time for that, said Patricia Hayes, a human engineer from Detroit. That's a 4-day round trip minimum. Then the colony is lost, a Draken counselor said grimly. No it's not. Patricia pulled up holographic displays. Look, the elegant solution is impossible. So let's go with the ugly one. We've got 17 mobile processing units in range. None of them are powerful enough alone, but what if we link them? That's never been done. The latency issues alone will be a problem, yeah. So we compensate. Jake, you still got those error correction algorithms you used on that communicator? Jake was already pulling up files on his tablet. Way ahead of you. But we're gonna need something to physically hold the quantum state stable while the processes sync up. A young Draken technician named Seraph spoke up nervously. What about a gravitational anchor? We use those for ship moorings. That's for ships, not quantum fields, Varenthal objected. But the principle is the same, Seraph insisted, gaining confidence. Creating a stable point in spacetime. If we modified the frequency. It might work, Patricia said. It absolutely shouldn't work. But it might. What followed was the most beautiful chaos Jake had ever witnessed. Draken ran calculations while humans rigged hardware connections that made the engineers wince. Someone literally used cargo straps to hold the processing unit in place because the proper mounting bracket had broken. Patricia's error correction code was held together partially by what she called aggressive optimism and spite. The whole thing was held together with advanced quantum physics, jury-rigged hardware, and the desperate hope that two species thinking together could pull off what neither could do alone. When they activated it, Jake held his breath. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to ripple. The tear in space sealed like a wound closing. The hostile energies dissipated. The colony was safe. The command center erupted in cheers. Draken and humans hugged each other, species differences forgotten in the moment of shared triumph. Vorenthal stared at the readings in disbelief. This solution is offensive to every principle of elegant engineering. But it worked, Jake said. It absolutely should not have worked. But it did. Vorenthal looked at him, and then something amazing happened. The ancient Draken engineer laughed. Really laughed, deep and genuine. You've ruined me, Jake Miller. I used to care about elegant solutions. Now I just care about solutions that work. What have you done to us? Taught you to give a damn more than you care about being perfect, Jake said with a grin. Eventually, Jake went home. The conclave offered him luxury, prestige, a position of honor. But he missed Chicago. Missed his little shop. Missed the simple satisfaction of fixing Mrs. Rodriguez's toaster and seeing her smile. The shop looked the same when he returned, but it had changed in small ways. There was a new sign next to the old faded one, written in glowing Draken script that translated to "Where broken things learn to sing again." His workbench had new tools now, some human and some alien. A holographic projector sat next to his ancient vice. Draken alloys mixed with bins of earth metal. 2 worlds, working together. Lily visited every weekend. She was 16 now, studying engineering on a full conclave scholarship. The mechanical dragon sat on Jake's workbench, occasionally waking to puff holographic flames and watch him work. One afternoon, a college student came in with a broken laptop. Simple repair, loose connection on the motherboard. As Jake fixed it, he explained what he was doing and why. "How do you know all this?" the student asked. "Practice. Patience. And understanding that every machine speaks the same language if you listen." Jake handed back the laptop. "Also, I had some pretty good teachers. Some of them were dragons from outer space, which sounds crazy when I say it out loud." The student laughed, thinking it was a joke. Jake didn't correct him. That night, Jake got a video call from Mars. Praxis appeared on screen, his blue scales gleaming with excitement. "Jake. We did it. That experimental engine design, the one everyone said was impossible? We got it working by combining Draken quantum theory with that cooling trick you showed me. It's 30% more efficient than anything we've built before." "That's great, kid. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without everything you taught me. When are you coming back to Mars? We've got 6 new problems that need the human touch." Jake smiled. "Next month. Right now I've got a shop full of broken things here that need fixing. But I'll be back. Promise." After the call ended, Jake sat in his quiet shop and looked around. At the tools on the wall. At the dragon toy watching him with glowing eyes. At the stars visible through his window, knowing that among them were friends and students and a whole civilization that had learned to improvise again. The Draken Conclave had adopted a new saying, translated from human wisdom and now taught in their academies across the galaxy: "The universal language isn't mathematics or protocol. It's caring enough to try when others have given up." Jake Miller had left Earth as a simple mechanic. He'd returned as something more, a bridge between worlds, a teacher who'd reminded an ancient civilization of a simple truth. Every broken thing deserves a second chance. Every problem has a solution if you're willing to think outside the box. And sometimes the most powerful tool in the universe isn't advanced technology or ancient knowledge. Sometimes it's just stubbornness, creativity, and giving a damn. Jake turned off the lights in his shop and headed upstairs to his small apartment. Tomorrow would bring more repairs, more problems to solve. Maybe they'd be simple Earth technology. Maybe someone would bring him something alien that shouldn't exist. Either way, he'd figure it out. Because that's what Jake Miller did. He fixed things. And somehow, in the process, he'd helped fix something much bigger: the gap between species, the fear of failure, and the forgotten art of creative problem solving. Not bad for a mechanic from Chicago.